So good Monday to everyone. It's been a little bit over 4 weeks since we've been into quarantine. Just wondering how it's going for you guys. You've been out of school for a while now. Trying to stay busy, or you're trying to stay alive? How are things going? Just staying low and staying lazy? What's been going on? Some have been asking the question, and I think many people ask the question, now what does this all mean with this sickness and now it's been going on for a number of weeks and so long now? What is the purpose of all this? And what does God desire from me out of this? Or what is God really doing? And I think anytime we ask those questions of anything in life, they all have to come under the grander question, or the bigger question, or the biggest question of all, and that is, what is the meaning of life? Why any of this? Why life at all? Why are we here on this planet at all to experience anything in life? What is the point? What does God really want from me? And we need to start with that question first in order to understand and to really understand the smaller questions in life. The big question, what does it all mean? It's a very important question. And I think we can glean some information about the answer to this question from Scripture, even though it's a really big question and many feel it's a very complicated question. I think Scripture is pretty clear on what it all means, on what life in general means, what it means to really be alive, to really live, what God is really looking for us in any or from us in any circumstance. When we look at creation, we see that God created man and he created woman with a certain image. And that image was his image. It was God's image. God created people in his image. This is a real important key to understanding what is the meaning of life. Where is it all leading to? Where is it all going? Why are we here? What are we doing? When we understand that we're people created in God's image, then we can get closer to the answer to that question. We see that Adam and Eve were created in God's image, and yet, shortly after they were created, they sinned. They broke God's commandment. They fell short of the requirement that God had given to them. And because of that sin, because of that infraction that they found themselves amidst the consequence of, when they got kicked out of the garden, because of that, they found that image, the image of God that was put on their life, kind of scarred. It's kind of marred. It wasn't really where God desired it to be. The funny thing is, when Satan came to Eve and tempted her in the garden and said, "Did God really say you shouldn't eat of this tree?" He also said to her this. He said, "Listen, God doesn't want you to eat from this tree, because in the moment that you do, you will be like him, knowing good from evil." Now, it was really sinister, because God didn't want to keep Adam or Eve from being like him at all. They had already been created to be like him. God was not keeping that from them in any way. But what happened when Eve ate that fruit and when Adam ate that fruit is they kept themselves from becoming more and more like him. The real answer to this question of what does it all mean? Why am I here? What is God doing? The purpose of it all is that he might fully restore that image of God that he had initially put into people. That he might restore that and bring that back to life. Now, when we think of images, we think of appearance, or we think of physical appearances. So we might believe that God is a God who is human like we are, that he looks like us, that he has 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes and 2 hands and 2 feet. And maybe we picture God as an old man sitting up there in the sky with a long beard and a golden scepter in his hand, sitting on a throne. But when we look at Scripture, Scripture is not really talking about us looking like God. When it talks about us being created in his image, it doesn't mean that God is human like we are. In fact, the Scripture says this, that God is a spirit, and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. So if God is a spirit and yet we're made in his image, in what way are we made in his image? Well, the answer to that question lies in this, that we were made not to look like God, but to be like God. Not to look like him with a nice haircut or pretty brown eyes, but to be like him in our character, in how we speak, in who we are essentially as a human being. His desire for us is that no matter what situation that we go through, whether it's difficult or whether it's great, we are like him in all circumstances. Our character is like him. We demonstrate a response to anything that God would approve of, or that God himself, in a manner in which God himself would respond. So no matter good or bad, God is looking for us to respond properly, to develop in us and to create in us that image that he's looking for. Now, it's very easy for us to get away from that image in our life. Even when things are good, we might be saying, why are things so bad? If things weren't so bad, maybe it would be easier to serve God. Well, I want to suggest to you today that even when things are good, and maybe even especially when things are really good, that's when we really get far from God. We feel like we don't need him. And we get off and we forget about him. And then we get more and more away from his likeness and who he is. God desires, even in good times, that we respond in the ways that he would respond. And then in bad times as well, that in bad times that we respond in the ways that he has called us to respond, so that he can recreate in us the image that he rightfully intended from the very beginning. So why all this? Because bad things do happen in life. But it's not always about the situation that we find ourselves in. Listen, situations happen all the time. Our life is full of situations. We go through situation after situation after situation. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. But what is God looking for in all of those situations? What is the constant thing that he's looking for? Is that we are like him in any situation. And that if we're not like him, if we're getting too far away from him, he will use situations to draw us back to him and make us conform even more to the image of Jesus. Make us conform even more to the likeness of his son. That's the purpose of all the situations that we are faced with in life, to conform us to the image of his son.